Hi, thank you for joining me today. And in this discussion, I'll be talking with a good friend of mine, Pup, and we're going to be
Hey,
talking
hey.
to say hello to everyone. Uh, Today, we're
Hello.
going to be talking about consistency in both terms of League of Legends and in life. We want to have a discussion about what does it mean to be consistent and how is it you can measure it. All right, Pup, do you want to take the first crack at it, or do you want to have me lead in with my version of consistency as I see it? I would like to
I
have you
actually
start
want
if you
to,
can.
yeah, I actually kind of want to challenge the existence of consistency and what that truly means in kind of like League of Legends. I look at consistency kind of very different than everyone else. There is one consistent pattern within League of Legends. These are timers, minions, etc. And all those are its base consistency, but every game is inconsistent in the way that a person plays it. And it's more in the matter of like a game is only as consistent as its player, if that makes sense.
So one thing I hear in this version of it is you're saying your version of it is divergent from everyone else's, right?
Kind of. I would think so. I hear more people saying that if you do this at this time, or you do this at this time, or you do this at this time, you will become consistent. But I kind of view it as a fallacy because it's not true consistency. There's no way to fully say that you can do that every time at that time.
But how
That
do you know?
requires because that would require the other person to be consistent and not doing that same thing.
Which other person?
Any other player.
I
Any
mean,
decision you make based on consistency.
here's one scenario I'll run you through then. You get to decide certain actions that other players don't get to prevent.
Yeah,
You can consistently do certain maneuvers like basing on 1200 gold and TPing back to lane,
true, but
shoving a certain wave.
if a person recognizes that consistency, they can make your timing inconsistent, can't they?
No, certain things are not preventable.
Hmm.
If you have a jungler hovering your lane at a certain minute, can you actually try and fight your opponent? No. You have to respect that threat. Same thing with your wave is pushing away from you and you're against a champion with high threat like Darius. You must respect that. You
Okay,
can't
so what is
defy
your
it.
viewpoint of consistency?
Consistency is being aware of the patterns that lead you to a successful outcome result. So when I base on 1200 gold and get a lost chapter, that's a consistent pattern because I know that once I have that lost chapter, my champion will be much more functional in the game. So what I do is I try to focus on avoiding things that will prevent me from getting to 1200 gold. That might be I don't take unnecessary trades, or I don't try and all in my opponent, or I avoid over rotating to early fights because I play Cassiopeia and her early mana pool is very, very limited. So I don't try and over trade with my opponent. I focus on just being careful with my usage of E on minions. And my goal is 1200 CS, 1200 gold before my first base because then I will be online and everything that comes after I'm online is much, much smoother and I can actually do things.
Okay. Let's say a fight breaks out in the mid river towards the grubs, but like kind of closer to your lane.
Mm-hmm.
Do you stay consistent and reach your item goal, or do you rotate?
It depends on the scenario. Usually I will ping my jungler off and I will not go.
Okay. But depending on the scenario, you would say you would choose the inconsistent path there if it like seemed helpable or peelable.
No, only if the
Didn't.
targets were low enough that I can kill them within minimal mana usage.
Okay.
Or my ally is strong enough, he has enough of an advantage in the fight that it's clearly winning if I go. It's not like I would
Would
go
the
like it would be inconsistent. It's like if I go, it's an automatic win.
Okay. Would that not be considered a more selfish playstyle?
Yes, absolutely.
And in that case, is consistency in itself just selfishness?
Yes, because here's the thing. Consistency is actually you should expect your allies to do their own selfish things too. Everyone should
Hmm.
expect you should make a play that's selfish for you because you need to protect yourself. You need to protect your power and agency in the game by being selfish where necessary. Now, it's important though that you don't view it as never help anyone. As I said, if the fight is clearly winning if I go, I go. But I will not jeopardize my game state over my ally. That's what to me what consistency is. It's the
Okay.
ability to say no to certain fights, but being aware of when you can go.
So then how do you deal with the inconsistencies of each game? How do you keep those consistent?
Well, so let's think about invades, for example. Invades are examples of where inconsistency can be very heavily introduced.
Oh yeah, it's about 95% of the inconsistent coin flips of League is
I think that's my
first 2 minutes.
I think that's a bit of a gross overstatement though, because like I think there's a lot of other moments that cause inconsistencies, like jungler ganks. There are moments like what dragons you're getting on the map. There are moments like which team got the grubs or feats. These have a lot more like power over what's inconsistent, I think, rather than just invades. But invades can give you like a tempo start of the match. The way I deal with inconsistency of invades is I usually focus on defending against them within reason. Like if I analyze the threat the enemy team has, if there's anything really really dangerous, I will be in a more defensive position, and I just am trying to like put myself in a position where I will not die, but I'm ready to support if I needed. Now, obviously, this depends on champion, because if I'm Cassio, I really don't want to do anything with invades. I have no interest in it at all. Like I don't even bother with it. I don't defend it. I don't do it, because on Cassio I have E level 1, and that spell does like 1.5 damage per mana, unpoisoned, and that's pretty terrible. But I think actually one time I saw this was I saw as how like sometimes when people go to their tower and then they AFK. Stop. Still with me? I think he might be AFK for a second, but I'm gonna keep talking on this one. Players oftentimes at the start of the lane will go AFK at their tower. Not oftentimes, I should say. It's a thing that some players do, and it makes you think that they just don't know what to do. But in reality, what I found one time was I watched a Zed player who went AFK at the second tier tower, and it really struck me because AFKing at the second tier tower, in particular, is the play that says I will not have anything mess up my start. You can't end up getting randomly hit by abilities or hooked. You can't get pulled into anything. You are absolutely saying no to everything. And it really emphasizes the fact that it's a choice what happens to you like minion spawning. You decide what you're going to let happen to you. Whether you position for watching for invades, whether you're just going to like drop your ward, whatever you're doing, whether you choose to invade. For me, the key to consistency is make a decision. Decide what you want. All right, how you doing, pups? I kind of went on there while you're away, I think, but what did you catch? Did you hear any of that, or were you unable to hear?
I caught the key of consistency.
Can you give me back like what you've heard, so I know where you're at?
Lord. We ended off on. Sorry, I just got whole distracted. My Wi-Fi
You're fine.
decided to play games.
Just tell me like where you're what you heard out of what I was saying there, so I know where you're following along.
We ended on invades and gross overstatement.
Okay, okay. So I was outlining how I think I'm gonna skip to the example of what happens to like before minion spawn is you decide where you position. That's your choice. And I learned this really well from you know how when players go to their tower and they AFK?
Yeah.
It seems like they just don't know what they're doing, right? Like usually when you see that, like it seems like they're unaware when you look at it from the outside, right?
Yeah, kind of. I usually look at it as a type, though.
Yeah, because here's actually let me explain. This make a lot of sense when I say this. I once saw a Zed who really opened my eyes because he AFK'd at the second tier tower.
Oh.
And that's a super interesting play when you think about it, because second tier tower says nothing will affect me. Yeah. Because at first tier tower, you can actually get tagged by abilities, you can get all kinds of random things can end up happening to you when you're up that far. Some champions like Blitzcrank might try and cheese you, or you get poked by, like, say, a Vigar, an Ash W. Like, these things can happen to you when you're actually at that first tier tower. But AFKing at the second tier tower is basically saying that you will not be pulled into anything. And like that's a very deliberate choice. And I actually
True.
came to really appreciate that for what it is. It's saying, I'm not going to let anything level 1 affect my ability to reach my smooth early game. And that really, really made a beautiful point of how everything you do in the early game like that is your own choice. And the key is make a decision. What do you want? What do you think about
Would you
that?
say there's
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I no, the thing is I fully agree, and I there's nothing to really counter there because while it's considered selfish playing, consistency in itself is a selfish act.
Mm-hmm.
In order to be consistent, you have to give, you have to take, you have to understand the consistency of the game itself. The game will consistently give you gold, consistently give you objectives.
Correct. Now, here's a question for society, actually, almost. Why shouldn't we be shouldn't we be like selfish in a bit, like a way? When you're on an
Well,
airplane and the masks come down, what do they tell you? Attach your mask first.
yeah,
That
but
is
there's a
a
problem
selfish
with that.
act.
At the same time, we teach others to be inconsistent, to be unselfish,
Who
and it's
does?
a
Like,
moral dilemma. The world itself, how many times in your life when you were younger did you hear sharing is caring?
that doesn't mean don't be selfish.
It
If okay, so
100%
here,
does,
I'll take an example. Sharing is caring is about when you have excess. But
but
it's
it's
like
not
if you were
excess.
saying like I have my food here, right?
Yeah,
If I just gave away all my food and had none for myself, that would be excessive and unreasonable. If I have enough food
true,
for me to eat, but I can also feed someone else, I should.
but it's not in the sense of that. It's used too liberally, I guess is the way to put it.
Well,
It's
we're trying to be strict here in this sense because it's easy to get into the gray area of like looking at it as, you know, vague or it's implied. But I'm trying to be really strict with these definitions of like consistency is about protect and take care of your basic needs first,
yeah,
and then help others. Don't take from others what is theirs for their needs. If you're in your top laner's lane, you help them. Like I actually a great example is like jungle tax. People like to say, where a jungler ganks your lane and then they take some of your wave. In the scenario where the laner got the kill, I believe it is 100% reasonable for the jungler to take a bit of the wave. If the jungler got the kill, he should not take any minions, but he should help the laner push without taking the CS. Because
yeah,
in that scenario, both people need to eat. And it's
I
so
agree.
I will never forget actually one time I had an Aurelia mid laner who was really quite doing pretty well. I was doing not great, honestly. She came up to help me in top lane and she killed my laner and then I need to get my wave crashed. And I will never forget the feeling of watching my Aurelia not kill my minions intentionally. Because this is a champion who, if she wanted to, she could kill every single one of them in a blink of an eye.
True.
But she left them all for me. And I actually remember, like, one thing actually this inspired me was this. I was ready to follow her to the end of the earth. Like, it was actually incredibly motivating and, like, morale driving for me.
Was she jungle or top side?
She was middle. She was mid.
Middle.
She was
Oh,
Irelia mid, came up for a gank top lane, and then helped me shove my wave. I would remember when I saw her lead me that whole wave, I was like, I will go to war with you.
true. But would that not be inconsistent for her?
Why? She's gotten a kill out of the lane gank, and she got her farm mid lane.
Well, she got her farm mid lane then, yeah.
Here's the big thing actually to consider is this. To win games of League of Legends, I actually mentioned this earlier when we were talking about assassins, you need allies.
True.
So you have to cultivate your allies as if they're like plants and crops that you have to grow. But you don't want to make sure you don't harm yourself in the process. Sometimes players will over cultivate their allies at their own expense.
Hmm.
Like it's easy to see people who like sacrifice all their own like power for their ally. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, but now you're all in on them and you have no say. And that's like, can lead to unhealthy expectations, pressure, and it's really, really unhealthy and toxic, but for friendships sometimes too, and that happens. Because one person feels like
True.
they're carrying the weight of the world.
So then, how would you say an individual builds both a consistent play style with healthy selfishness and a consistent interaction with their team to where they can understand what needs to be done?
So first thing I think is important to this is understanding what are your resources that you need to get. What is your like obligation to collect? Now, this could be, the minions in your lane, your jungle camps as a jungler, or like, a certain kill in a fight. Like if you get that, like view it like this: if you kill your laner, like that gold that went to you there, like that was, yours to collect. If your ally gets it, you shouldn't like give up your wave then. And the big thing is actually like when it comes to like pushing out side waves, like in the mid game, players have this tendency when you're trying to do lane assignments where they like, who gets the wave here, you know? Like say
Yeah.
you and your bot laner are both like you're playing mid and your bot laner and you are both bot lane, and now you guys like one of you's gonna rotate mid, but it's like who clears this wave here? And it's like, well, the answer to that question is if there's a wave waiting to be collected mid, you should not give up that wave because they're gonna go mid and get that wave. If you gave them this wave too, you got 0 waves. They got 2.
So,
They're
what do you do about players who don't want to give the wave, even if they have to? Like it's the equal trade.
um well, for one, I play with chat off is just a mandatory setting because I think a lot of times in League of Legends, players will like emotionally say things or like act in a way that like if you see what they say, you almost like want to work with them less
True,
because
but I
like
mean more in the sense of pings.
I mean, what are they gonna spam ping or what are they doing?
Yeah, spam ping. It's usually spam ping missing or spam ping danger.
So now there is an exception case. If someone is pinging like that, I usually give them the benefit of the doubt to think they need it for an item. There is short-term examples where they can like might need something immediately, where it's like, okay, I can make a sacrifice for your short-term like major gain. Like a good example is like how like when you're going to the hospital in an emergency, you can speed and such.
Yeah.
That is an emergency situation where you're allowed certain privileges. That's like when you give up resources in League. It's like, hey, I need 100 gold here. Can I have your Krugs? And it's like the jungler will be like, yeah, you can have them. Buys you an item.
Would you say this is tailor specific to like certain servers?
No, no. I think it's universal.
Because I know that on the KR server, if mid lane doesn't get second blue buff, it's an open mid FF.
So that's cultural, but I don't think it's like to say that this is a concept that can exist there. I think it's just they have expectations,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
that's a part of like the toxic dynamic effect. But I don't think it's like limited from existing there because I think actually in a way this actually does exist there in that fact like they expect second blue buff. That is believe that's something that they're like is consistently owed to them. Almost in a way because of, like the fact that that's like the culture, it has become consistent to expect that.
Hmm.
As a jungler,
Fair.
you're expected to give your mid laner second blue buff. And if you don't do that, you have like broken what's like expected.
Why do you
Now,
think there's such a divide in consistency though? Like between servers?
well, I mean, it's gameplay styles and like tempo pacings. Like, so KR for example is a server that they play like ultra fast. Like they just want to fight and they just want to get right into it. They don't want to like play it slow. They're not really worried about tactical stuff. They just want to hands check each other, kinda. And you know
That's
what?
fair.
That makes them very mechanically good at the game. Makes them very mechanically good at the game. Because if you're just hands checking each other over and over, oh, you're gonna get good at the game. And that's why also why their culture is very focused on in and out. Like they get in a game, blows out, they get out of the game. Because when you play that kind of style, like it's actually their style. It's consistent in like what you expect, but the gameplay style is very inconsistent. Like,
True.
that's an example of inconsistent gameplay because you have massive blowouts occurring all the time. And the only way you can win is by saying, hey, I'm going to be mechanically better than everyone I play against. That's where you get consistency there. And you know what? Forged in the Crucible, they get some great players. Though, I think you have to have that mentality they have over there because otherwise players would just turn into like, you know how NA people get really like toxic? As
Yeah.
much as Korea is bad, I think that they don't get it like the same kind of toxicity as NA where people are like really like vitriolic and trying to like, send death threats to each other. Because
Oh no, they have it worse.
I mean, say like this. Let me make the statement here. It's like they
Okay.
have an expectation of like you just have to be better, and like it's actually
Yeah.
just expected. Like that, everyone's gonna be like trying to be better at the game. Like you have to be expecting of you should be trying to be better than your opponent. But it's like that's just the culture there. It's not like it's a hard feeling thing. NA is like it's resentment in NA. Like NA is resentment like hard. Players will resent each other and like I guess I describe it as like it's almost like when you're competing against someone, you're not really like I fucking want to kill this guy. It's more like we're both warriors. We know what we're doing.
I think I get what you're saying. There's a huge consistent difference between the two servers, like NA and KR.
Mm-hmm.
That one difference is in KR, when you lose, you blame yourself and you feel really fucking shitty.
Mm-hmm.
In NA, when you lose, it's anyone else's fault.
Yeah, exactly. NA wants to scapegoat a lot. Yeah, scapegoating is a huge thing, and that's actually part of the league. Why league is actually so difficult because and it's why it's so difficult to be consistent in league because it's so easy to find ways to off put like why something went wrong.
True. It's more like looking for a reason of why you keep losing instead of looking for the reason why you're losing.
And actually bring it back to consistency here too. It's when things go like really chaotic, or say someone makes a play that you weren't prepared for, like your jungler made an invade that went poorly, and now like your laner comes back with blue buff, and it's like your whole lane dynamic is different. That can feel like
Hmm.
how are you supposed to be consistent when this kind of thing happens, right?
Yeah.
And the trouble is that stuff will happen, and when it does, you have to be adaptive to know, okay, what are my reference points still? Because even if your enemy like gets stronger, then like gets a kill here or there, gets a blue buff, you can still be consistent about some things. You can still be consistent about trying to reach a certain amount of gold. You can still be consistent about trying to minimize a certain part of the lane or making a certain roam. Like there are things you can still be consistent in even if the conditions around them are different.
Hmm.
Like
Fair. But if you're
mhm.
constantly consistent, how do you leave room for like evolution or inconsistencies?
Well, what do you mean? Give me an example. Like where would you want to do that,
Let's say
or what it looks like?
let's say your jungle bled out to your mid lane, and now your mid lane's like 1,300 gold up.
I mean
You
that
can
okay. So wait,
stay
wait, 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 wait,
consistent.
wait 1 second. 1,300 gold is a
Hmm.
big amount of gold. Like a single kill is 300, and then like even if they get a small advantage, they wouldn't be more than 500 ahead usually.
Okay, okay. Uh, let's say like 650.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Whole. Oh, let's think. They have a lost chapter up on you. You
That
have boots.
let's just stick with raw gold value for now.
Raw gold. Okay, so there's 60. There's 650 up on gold.
Yep.
If you stay consistent, you will consistently be behind where they're at in gold for the rest of the game.
Well, consistency doesn't mean you have to not get any other advantages. Sometimes consistency is if you're playing Zed level 6, you go for a consistent kill.
Well, yeah, but
That would imply you get 300 gold ahead of them.
true. But how
When
do
I'm
you
playing Cassio,
balance?
I can go for a consistent R flash if I want to on a target that's vulnerable and has no escape.
True, but that would imply that they're playing inconsistent in that moment with what they need to do against your champion.
No, because sometimes you can make plays that sorry, 1 sec. 5 minute timer went off. But There's some plays that, like, if I go for like a flash W on Maokai or Pantheon, that's consistent.
Hmm.
And they don't have a way to prevent it unless they're playing like Sivir. Like, there are some things like if you use flash with them, they become guaranteed initiations. Like Camille, E flash. That's a guaranteed initiation. That's consistent. And you can use it to try and get a kill. And yes, your opponent has ways they can play around this, but it's like these are moments where you can get that gold advantage back. Being consistent doesn't mean that you can't get advantages. Oftentimes, it's about getting certain advantages by following your consistency. When I play Cassio, I take E level 1, Q level 2, E again at level 3, because at that point, if I fight with that and I have all my mana still left up, I can kill my opponent if they try and fight me straight, like, head on. Like, my damage output with that second rank of Twin Fang, it will let me kill people if they try and fight me head on. And I know that. And I play around that fact.
Fair. But how do you consistently make sure that like those situations occur?
I mean, I level my E at level 1. I level my Q at level 2. I avoid casting it unnecessarily. And level 3, I level up my E again. And then I see, okay, are they going to walk into a queue and try and fight me?
But that's just it though. What if they don't?
Then I just keep slowly scaling up to 6 and getting my 1200 gold. It's about having a fallback plan of what you would expect yourself to do. Like the getting to 1200 gold plan, that's the fallback baseline. I go for that as the minimum. The getting the kill potentially level 3, that's a maybe, unless they have a D shield. Like that's the one thing is like if they have a Dorn shield, that's a condition where I go, okay, I don't even try to kill them per chapter. I almost do not even try and like interact with them really.
So the key to consistency would be optimal baseline with paths to opportunity.
Yeah, it's about knowing what the potential like avenues are, knowing what the conditions of do not attempt something is. So like if I see a D shield, I do not attempt to kill them pre-chapter. It's not on the table at all. Like I have learned so many times that if you try and kill someone with a Dorn shield, it's Cassiopeia, you will exhaust all your mana and then be left in this terrible, terrible vulnerable state where you feel like you're just helpless.
Yup.
Whereas if you just get to your chapter, that D shield doesn't matter anymore. But you gotta like realize what it's like knowing where the stop signs are. Like what are the signs that say you can't do this? It's kind of like how split pushing works actually as well. You have to like know what are the signs that I cannot do this.
Well, split pushing itself is kind of viewed through a lens of consistency.
Yeah, it is because it's about being able to consistently apply pressure without dying.
Yeah. It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because it's inconsistent of how your enemies react, so you have
What
to
do you mean?
react
Wait, so
consistently.
what do you mean by inconsistent how they react? Because I think it's actually all about how they react.
Well, it is about all how they react, but at the same time, you can't control how many people they react with, how they choose to react.
I mean, you can, like, if in a way, it's like if you're strong enough to kill one defender, they now are forced to send two,
True.
and you can see who's rotating, so you know who's coming. You can see who's missing, what the whereabouts were. You can set up scenarios so that you have more like influence over that. All right, so we're almost to our 30-minute mark here, but this has been an interesting conversation about consistency, and I think really drives home that point of it's important to be selfish for your own like basic needs. Like, don't be like taking other people's like what other people need for themselves basics, but take what you need for yourself and do not give it up because if you don't, you won't be strong enough to make an impact.
Selfish.
It's self-preservation, if anything.
Fair. You must preserve yourself like a fine wine.
Otherwise, you have no
it's
control
weird.
over the game. And that's the thing. You see it in a lot of players. the feeling of being helpless and, like having no control over the outcome, that probably means that you did not protect yourself in like what you need. Otherwise, you would be able to influence that game. All right. Any final notes you want to add?
No, I think that about covers it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this talk. And this has been me and Pups talking about consistency. I
Thanks
hope
for
you have a great
having me.
day.